Hi, my name is Yvonne Livingston, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Urban Youth Trauma Center. And what I do there is I bring a cultural sense to the practice. I talk about real things that matter, being as, you know, a Black female, mostly single parent most of my life, well, not most of my life, but when I just started having children, right? Um, but being that voice in the room, to say what I was going through, and they helped me process some of those difficult things that I went through. And so this is my colleague here, but I'm going to let him introduce himself because he could probably do a better job than me. So Roberto, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Roberto Lopez Tamayo. I am an instructor of clinical psychiatry, but also I am a licensed clinical psychologist here at the Urban Youth Trauma Center. I'm interested in working with parents, caregivers. I think that there's so much work to do, so much things that we can provide at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for having me, Yvonne. The first thing that pops up in my mind as someone who works with caregivers is whatever message that I try to convey, I want to make sure that they take away something from every interaction or conversation that I have with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the key word is trust. How to develop, foster trust in children. And that's key.
And I don't disagree with what you just said, because sometimes that was part of, why I wasn't able to, relate to my children, right? It was trust. And so, when I think about that, it's like, well, what did I get trust issues from, right? And so as a child, you develop those and you'll carry them through your adult life. And then when you have children, well, at least that's what happened to me. So I can only speak for me. That's what happened, right? Those trust issues and how you build that back. You have to have a loving stance, right? To hear two truths, the truth that you have as a parent and then the truth that the child has. You got to hold both of them together. One doesn't outweigh the other. It's just, come on, let's just sit down and listen and let's just talk, right? And that's what you do, as a family, you want to make sure that we're all able to sit down and relate to each other, and I think that's what we do, right? Because this isn't, for a lack of a better word, this is a conversation between two parents. You have children, right, Roberto?
I do. 3 wonderful children that keep me busy for the most part in the afternoons, on the weekends, and they're my fuel to continue to do this work, because I know when I see them growing, learning, I can see how children need that connection. And as every parent, and maybe you may give me also your opinion on this, children don't come with an
instructions.
That's the word. I was looking for a different word, but instructions. We don't take any courses in college about how to be a parent, and so we have to learn as we go. And going back to that trust, I can tell how important it is to help our children to develop that secure attachment and feel safe and secure, so that they can start exploring and learning and growing.
Mm-hmm.
Most children may have that, but other children who have gone through something traumatic, they might have difficulties with trust. So we have to be also ready to help them develop that trust again.
So I want to jump in and ask a question of you because, I kind of learned on the fly, how to, develop the trust. And so I'm gonna bounce off of you when you give me some cues, because then I have to listen to what it is you're saying and say, oh yeah, I did that. So how would a parent build trust, with their child? Because like I said, I did mine on the fly and I made a lot of mistakes in between, getting to that point. So what are some suggestions that you have for parents to start building trust?
First, establish routines, something that is consistent in their lives. That will help children and adolescents to feel safe and secure. Predictability. In the morning, doing the things same way so that they know what to expect. Even though the environment can be so challenging and chaotic outside, but in the home environment, if they know what to expect, that helps them feel safe in that sense. Also, being a role model, because children, they are sponges, they are learning from the environment. If the family environment, they see their parents managing strong emotions, they're going to learn from that. There's a caveat. There's so many stressors in our lives as parents that we also have to have self-compassion. We have to know that we are doing our best and that we may make some mistakes, but recognizing that, validating children's feelings is important, and knowing that we can work on that connection, even though things may not go the way that we want it to be, but that we can keep working on it. 3, as I said, also is validating and respecting their feelings. When you listen to your child, they feel respected and also they feel validated. You are creating that safe and nurturing environment where they can express the way they want it. And if you can provide that, they will be able also to create or develop that trust with other people. So this is how important it is that family environment to be stable and to be consistent for children.
I think, and here's what I did once, because I can go along with your concept and how you told me, because I did eventually kind of build that. Like in 2006, I ended up getting sick and had to stay home, and so I had to become the stay-at-home mom, and so I was like, what is this? I've never had to do it before, right? And so times when I would see my children upset, and I'd try and force them to talk to me, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And it's like it was forceful. And it would be like nothing, right? And so what I started doing is setting up, what we would call therapy sessions, right? Where you can talk and say anything, and I wouldn't get mad. So they were allowed to curse, say different things, and I wouldn't judge, just to get it out, however it is they wanted to get it out. And so that started, building some trust. But what I found out later, down the line, they could talk to me about other people, but they weren't okay talking about me, because I was part of the problem too, And so now that, we have a better relationship, all my children are grown, that now we kind of have these really tougher conversations of, how did we not get along? What was the problem? What was the issue? And so it's making my conversations a little bit more meaningful, for me to listen to what it is that they say, because that was their experience with me. And I like that you pointed out some steps that, that I recognize that, kind of put me on a path of, allowing my children to speak, because in my community where I grew up, You know, it was like children should be seen and not heard. You better not say nothing.
I hear you. Also, it's something similar in the Latino culture, and I know there's so many subgroups and so many cultures within the Latino culture. But where I'm coming from, the Mexican culture is something similar. And let's recognize that we have the way that we were raised. That's exactly what we try to do. We do our best, but we can do much better.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I like the way that you describe how you establish that relationship and connection with your children. And I gotta say that it takes time.
It does.
It
It does.
takes time because we also want to be realistic with our expectations. Sometimes we expect too much about them. Like we want them to be little people, to behave, not yell, not rush, not run. Come on, they're children. But sometimes we don't have enough patience. We want them to stop exactly when we want them to stop. And this is when the problems begin.
Yeah.
I also have to say that it's also shifting the narrative.
Mm.
We may be sometimes more about don't do that, stop doing that. So it's no, 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 no. And it takes time also for parents to change your mindset and start saying, do this instead. What about watching TV? Or, hey, come with me and let's work on, I don't know, let's bake. You love baking as I do.
I do.
That's very therapeutic.
It
And
is.
so
Yeah.
doing things together like that can also make these moments of connection that are so important for children and parents, of course.
Mm-hmm. Because I think too, a lot of times, you know, now that, you know, I kind of retrospect and look back because all my children are grown. I didn't give myself time and space, you know, to be who I needed to be, you know, in moments where, you know, somebody broke something or somebody, you know, in there fighting, you know, I got to go in there and break a fight up, you know, taking those moments for me to say, you know what, I need a break right now in this moment because what's going on is not okay for me to deal with at this moment, you know, like step back, breathe, you know, if something's broken, you know, can it be repaired? You know, you have to start asking yourself questions, some very tough questions to regulate yourself before you address what happened. And so I kind of learned this, you know, on the back end, but initially, you know, is what we call I went in. You know, I had some very harsh words to say, you know, to my children because I was like, how could you do this? You know how much money this costs, you know, so you start thinking about the negatives immediately, you know, of what it costs to do something. So, you know, that's a whole nother topic that we can jump into, you know, maybe later of the conditions that put people in places where they think like that. You know, so culturally speaking, you know, I'm just going to touch on a little bit. I have to. Um, when you grow up in poverty, and this could be anybody, you know, it doesn't have to just be the Black community, but anybody that grows up into poverty, your mindset is different. You know, and I was engaging with someone earlier, and we were talking about this. Your mindset is different because, you know, it might have taken you a long money to save up to get something, and if you know if it breaks or you know your child breaks it, that's immediately what you think of, and you go to that place, you know, and so it's like I had to get out of that, you know, thinking that way because you can replace material things, but you cannot replace the image that your child has of you in your mind unless they're willing to work with you to, you know, make those changes. You know, it has to be a two-way street. It has to be forgiveness for how you be. You know, I had to forgive myself for the harmful things I said and did. So, you know, that's how I'm starting to bridge the family back together. You know, for me, I had to accept ownership of how I showed up to them. And so it's a very powerful tool. And you're right. It took plenty of times. Like I started this back in 2006. So it didn't happen overnight. But what I'm saying and what you're saying, is that there are different ways that we can do this. And we have tips, we have resources, and parents need to, take a break, put themselves in timeout, you know.
What I tell to my all caregivers, especially Latino caregivers, I'm not asking you to do things differently. I'm asking you to do what you do well, to do it more.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not asking them to change per se what they are doing. I want them to keep doing like the good stuff. For instance, many of them, they ask me, hey, I'm so busy. I don't have time to, because I keep telling about that moments of connection so that I can, strengthen that relationship. And they say to me, no, I don't have time. I go home so tired after working long hours. I said, okay, fine. You don't have to even set up some time. It's even making the most of those interactions. If you see your child doing something, utilize that moment to say, hey, recognize what they are doing and say something about it. Hey, I love your drawing. You are, or you are doing your homework
Yeah.
so quiet, or you've been seated and you are doing it so well. So finding ways to provide that positive reinforcement, but also to recognize what they are doing. Because the message that they are getting is, oh, my mom, my dad are noticing what I'm doing. The good stuff, not only the bad stuff, because everybody knows that. So they are becoming more aware of, yes, they are noticing what I'm doing. And so this is how we can also establish that connection, and they feel heard, listened, valued, trust at the end.
Yeah. And those are some of the things too that I had to start doing myself personally. And it wasn't easy, right? To find that time, because time is the most valuable thing that we own. And you don't get no change once you give it. Nobody say, you know what, you spent an hour with me, I think you deserve 30 minutes back, and you get it back. There's no change in time, right? And finding those times to connect, that's how I started listening to different music, and watching different TV shows, because then I had those moments where I had to sit down, and I like cartoons. So, that's how they got me. We would watch cartoons and then having conversations, and just, and I don't advocate for violence or anything like that. But sometimes when you have those moments to sit down with your child and they're watching something violent, right? And you're sitting there, you're like, ooh, you kind of cover your eyes and be like, oh my goodness, like, what's this? What's going on? You foster conversation that way, because then they can explain it to you how they're thinking about it, because they don't see what we see. There's a difference. We was talking about that. I was talking about this with Dr. Adil, in the music and how it changes. And so we have to be ready to adapt as parents, as caregivers, to kind of go in and say, you know what? Yeah, this was different for me back in the day, but how you're looking at it now is different, and I can learn from you. So then it becomes what we call Sankofa, right? Reaching back to move forward. So you have to take those experiences into account of what you did. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it ugly? And change it and make it positive, not only for the child, but for yourself. Because that's what I had to start doing, was taking those negative moments and turning them into a positive. So now how can I be different? And the psychoeducation tools that I learned being in college and being in the clinic and speaking with you and so many others is, it's a roundtable discussion of what a community would do to help a child. Building that wraparound service that Dr. Suarez talks about.
Yes, parents, we need a lot of help. And not because we are not capable of, but because the whole society is exerting so much power over children and mostly adolescents through social media, through like instilling certain ways to think, some distorted ideas about beauty and happiness and all that. How can we counteract that and again provide a safe and nurturing environment for our children? We can do it, yes, but we need also the support, the community support.
Mhm.
We need community programs. We need to rely also on neighbors. If my child goes to school and if he comes back home, I want someone to keep an eye on him. I don't want him to, like, I don't know, be jumped by anyone there, right? But if someone says, any adult, any caregiver says, hey, I know you, I know where you live, I'm watching you, I'm here for you. So having that, building that social fabric is so much needed because
Mhm.
we're working. I'm not able to be with my son there to provide that support. We also need, again, community programs where they can learn and develop skills like sports, but also social skills, learning things for life.
Mhm.
Some of our communities lack those resources.
Mhm.
And then it's putting extra work on parents who need to drive all the way to other places for their children to have that opportunity.
Mhm.
Every parent should have it easy in that sense, to have those resources within their community so that they don't have to work so hard, extra work, just to ensure that their children are meeting their needs.
Yeah, it's funny that I did sports as I could, right? But one of the things that what you just said is really just kind of blurted out in my head. I did music lessons with my children, and all the time they didn't like it. But I was like, this is something different. We don't have it in our own community. And yes, we had to travel, out of our neighborhood. I raised my children in Inglewood, and so where they had to go to the music lessons, or it's the Lower West Side over here where they got condos and it's nice and everything. But why don't we have a music program in our own communities? Why do our children have to travel? Because on the bus it was like an hour, in the car, maybe 20 minutes depending on traffic, right? But it's like when you have to do those things to get outside of what you want to do and what you want to be, it does make it discouraging for a parent that's work a lot of hours, and then got to come home to different things. And so it's the socialization of how does a parent or caregiver come back into, the home space and get to, woo style before they have to jump back in again, and have to do, those extra steps. And so that's where community does come in, who can help, who can do this or who can do that, so that we can begin to look out for one another. Like you said, you don't want your child to walk down the street and, maybe be bullied or something without an adult saying, hey, don't do that, and intervene, because that's what happened when I was growing up. Adults will intervene, and it was some things going on. And so those are teachable moments too, that you teach, your children not to fight, not to argue with anybody. Don't matter if it's in your house or not. Just don't do it. It's not a good thing.
Just I wanted to stay on just that keyword, trust. But of course, trust can be linked to many things. But you just reminded me of how we are missing those values, such as respect for the elderly. I mean, back in the days, my days, maybe your days, we used to respect the elders. If they said something about, hey, you should stop playing, or you should keep it quiet, we actually followed through. We obeyed those, instructions, commands, whatever. Nowadays, I don't think children are valuing, respecting the elders. And maybe that's my perception. But when it comes to people, especially neighbors, telling children in the neighborhood, hey, don't say that, or you should respect this or that. Sometimes they don't listen. They don't see the need. Or sometimes they can't even be, talk back to the elders. But that's a point for perhaps a different conversation. But that's, again, something that can be learned.
It can.
Family setting.
It can. And I'm gonna let it go after this. Respect is a two-way street too, so it's how you engage, it's how you go in, it's the language that you use, it's the communication tools, because you have to understand too that children don't think like you. They don't have the capacity to ration out all of those things and say, well, just because I do it, you do it. And children could be, advanced, and then children can be not so advanced where to the point where they don't understand. It needs to be broken down, to a point where they're at, and you going down to meet them where they're at should be seen as a love offering, if you will, because you're trying to blend something together, and then my pastor had told me a long time ago, he said, Yvonne, you're key to blending your family together. I was like, how do I do it? He's like, I don't know. Right. And so now that I've kind of went on this journey to figure out that question, how to build a family, it turned into how to build a community, how to bring everybody together, so that we can protect children, we can protect each other, and we can build what we want to see, because this is how we want to be. Don't nobody want to wake up and see violence. I know I don't, so it's like when you're living in it and when you're watching it all the time, you think that there's no hope, but there's plenty of hope. There's many things that we can do to help ourselves be who we need to be. And that's when, partnering with people like you, Roberto, because I love to hear your stories when you were talking about your children, to see, hey, is there some similarities here? Do we do the same things, or what do you do different? What can I take from you? Because that's sometimes what we do when we talk. We learn from each other. And that's what I want, again, for our communities. We just learn from each other. The tactics that we use to get through, put some lavender oil on the baby's feet, they'll go to sleep. Some old school tips, because that stuff worked. It worked. I still use some of it.
Yeah. There's nothing new under the sun anyway.
That's what they say.
Don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
Just have to tweak it a little bit and it may work. Yeah, this is a lovely conversation and we can keep going on for
it can. And so thank you so much for, taking up some of your time to explain, from your perspective and your vulnerability powers, right, as a parent, because we do need help. We don't know it all, and children do not come in a handbook.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm glad that we can talk about this, and hopefully other parents can see this video and hear what we are saying, and perhaps some of these things may resonate to them, or they might also relate to this. And we may have a round two, or to be continue this conversation any other time.
Right. And then we got resources on the website, the Urban Youth Trauma Center. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. And where else are we, Roberto?
Twitter. We have YouTube, although I'm not sure how active we are on YouTube.
Well, this is new content then, so it's gonna be on our YouTube page. So you all tune in until next time. Bye.
Bye.